Hello and welcome to Friday Double Bill, the show where we analyze and evaluate the latest films from Bollywood and Hollywood to help you make a more informed choice at the movies. I'm Fahad Samar and this is Mayank Shekhar.
Well, as you know, since the IPL ended, basically we're getting some smasher big budget pictures in the theatres, and therefore the first one that we're starting with is the big Bollywood release, that is Dil Dhadakne, directed by Zoya Akhtar, which will be followed by a major discussion on a major Hollywood release, which is The Age of Adaline. Dil Dhadakne, directed by Zoya Akhtar, is a film about an upper-class dysfunctional family. The story, however, plays out in such a way that we could be dealing with any other rich, metropolitan Indian family that hides several skeletons in the cupboard but smiles in public through it all. The picture is set in a luxury cruise liner. The Mehra family has invited a host of friends to celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary. Anil Kapoor plays the family patriarch, Shefali Chaya plays his wife, Ranveer Singh and Priyanka Chopra play their children. Priyanka's character is married to Rahul Bose. Ranveer falls for a lower class girl on board, that's Anushka Sharma. But much beyond these main parts, this ensemble cast film is a comedy of errors and manners, as more than a dozen young and old people comprising friends and family get together for a long vacation.
Well, I don't know about long vacation. It's meant to be a 10-day cruise, but at 2 hours and 50 minutes, it does seem like a very long vacation at the movies. Having said that, I mean, Zoya Akhtar has, in a very short period of time, established herself, perhaps in my opinion, as the foremost female director and certainly one of the top directors, regardless of gender, working in the Hindi film industry at the moment. Her first film, Luck by Chance, was actually, about the Hindi film industry. It was a loving send-up and spoof of Bollywood. Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara was all about seizing the day, not allowing yourself to wallow in mediocrity, and the story of three great boys who found themselves, each one their own journey and the road trip through Spain, so it was a bit of Spanish tourism. Here, of course, we have Turkish tourism. We've got the cruise liner, which is one of the USPs of this film. Phenomenal ensemble cast that you mentioned. Zoya's longtime collaborator Carlos Catalan, as far as the cinematography, does an excellent job, whether he's shooting in the tiny cabins in the ship or whether it's epic helicam shots. It's all great. Arjun Basin, who's working with the absolute top stars in Hollywood today, has done the costumes, so he has, it's impeccable as far as the costuming and look of the film. Zoya's films are always, the production design is great. I was, however, left a little cold by the story itself. I think this is kind of old wine in a new bottle at one level, because these themes of rich boy, poor girl, unhappy marriages, facade, this Punjabi family, boisterous. I kind of had seen this before, but the way it's all brought together is very delightful, and I think that is the strength of the film. But is it a great film? I didn't think so. What did you think?
Well, is it a great film or not? Of course, we have a whole discussion to have on that issue. But one thing is very, very clear. It's a horrendously long film. It's very languidly paced.
Yes.
But what I loved about it is that it's intensely real.
Yes.
And that's probably why it is absolutely likable. Beyond that, there is a second thing why I thought this movie is likable is, of course, because of the cast. We're looking at some of the finest actors being given some very great situations to work on, starting with Anil Kapoor. We were having this discussion on WhatsApp with a bunch of entertainment journalists, and they're wondering if this is the first time that Anil Kapoor has actually played a father. For somebody who's as old as that, he's actually never played a father before in a film. I mean, there were references to Lamhe, but he wasn't a father there.
Right.
And there was Mr. India, but he wasn't really a father there. But he is that typical Punjabi man, who's hardened by partition, who's living this particular life because he's quote unquote self-made, and therefore he's rich now, but at the same time he needs his network of other Punjabis, and he also needs to know what everybody else thinks about him. So I thought that was pretty well done. The other one, of course, is Ranveer Singh. Now, here we're looking at an actor who is playing being a person who, having grown up in Delhi, Fahad, I've known a lot of these kids who are extremely rich, extremely adorably dim-witted, and there's something very likable about them despite them being the super brat. I think he gets that super brat pat on, but I think the best performance in this film, and I'd be very surprised if she's completely overlooked given that there's so many other characters in the picture, would be Shefali Chai. I think she comes in for about just a few scenes. She's doing roughly the same thing, but man, she really stole my heart.
Yes, Shefali Chaya, now known as Shefali Shah, of course, and Priyanka Chopra, I think, did a mercurial job in this film. It was real, it was solid. I mean, it came from the heart. Farhan Akhtar, dependable as always.
More like a guest appearance.
Guest appearance, absolutely. This great casting by Nandini Shrikant. I think what I'm trying to say is that Zoya has managed to put together a phenomenal crew as far as all the departments are concerned, and they really rise to the occasion and do a great job. Again, I come back to the script. I'm a little worried that why the editing, was allowed to carry on for 2 hours, 50 minutes as it did, and unfortunately, I found that the story left me a little cold.
Well, I think the OMG moments or the oh my god moments that we usually look at for every film in this particular program is usually about one particular moment that just shook us in some form or the other. I think this film, given that there are so many things that we're dealing with at the same time, there isn't that one moment, except for that one time that we realized pretty early on in the picture that the narrator of this film is actually a dog called Pluto. And that's not what's the OMG for me, frankly speaking, Fahad. What was OMG were the lines that the dog has. I think he has the best lines. And at some point, I mean, my favorite line from that, from the dog being the narrator, was when he's referring to Mr. Mehra as a self-made man. And if he's such a self-made man, then maybe he should have made himself a little better. And this vintage Javed Akhtar kind of wit and humor. I only realized towards the end that Pluto's dialogue has been credited to Javed Akhtar. The other thing, and on a more serious note, Fahad, I think I felt that given that we're dealing with a dysfunctional family, it takes certain very harsh truths about marriages in general. And the sense I got, of course, it's not overtly mentioned in the film, is that there's a problem with marriage as an institution. But I think all marriages might be dysfunctional in some form if it doesn't come with love. And I think that point was pretty well put across.
I think so, completely. As far as my OMG moment in this thing is concerned, is really again with old Pluto. This is voiced by Amir Khan, which itself is, so it's been written by Javed Akhtar, it's voiced by Amir Khan. Unfortunately, I thought this is something that if it had been dispensed with, the film would not have suffered in any way, and I don't think it's greatly enhanced either. Yes, it's cute, but the device sort of wears thin. It's also unevenly paced and things. So it's a clever idea, but I think I was left with the idea that this was just clever, and that's all it really was as far as I'm concerned.
Well, this is a film almost entirely set on water, or at least in a cruise liner. The last time I remember a similar script that I'd seen on film was in 2007, a picture called Honeymoon Travels Private Limited, which was written by Zoya Akhtar and Reema Kagdi. But of course, those people didn't know each other, but it was a much tighter film in that sense. This is far looser. The other thing is that you have so many characters and so many subplots you're dealing with. At some point you start feeling claustrophobic in some form or the other. More importantly, given that these are the characters that keep coming in and going out, I felt even the beats were very, very television-like. This is a picture that I'll certainly watch on television, perhaps watch it twice on television. You should at least watch it once on theatre, I think. Theatre pe dekho.
Mayank, there's something called cabin fever. When you're sitting in a cruise ship for many, many, many weeks, you acquire this malaise where you're just yearning for land and probably to get out of the confines. I felt at 2 hours, 50 minutes, I wanted to get out of that, pretty quickly. Having said all of that, this is actually a very good film, if not a great film. Certainly dekho, theatre mein dekho, or chahe to isi hafte dekho. Last week, Mayank and I reviewed Welcome to Karachi. I thought it was a complete pheko. Mayank felt more charitably inclined, and he said,
well, TV pe dekho.
But let's find out what the Desi Martini audience has to say.
Welcome to Karachi was rated 2.8 out of 5 on Desi Martini. The Desi Martini verdict says, Welcome to Karachi is one comedy film that could have been awesome, but it just didn't deliver. One of the viewers says, some films should stick to being trailers in order to not disappoint later, like Welcome to Karachi.
After suffering a freak accident and miraculously remaining 29 years old for almost 8 decades, Adaline Bowman, played by Blake Lively, has lived a solitary existence, never allowing herself to get close to anyone who might reveal her secret. But a chance encounter with charismatic philanthropist Ellis Jones, played by Michael Huisman, reignites her passion for life and romance. When a weekend with his parents, played by Harrison Ford and Kathy Baker, threatens to uncover the truth, Adaline makes a decision that will change her life forever.
Well, Fahad, I'm not too sure if a film like this should necessarily go through the passage of logic as all movies should, because it's what is called a high concept film. But here we're dealing with age, right? And everyone's obsessed with aging in our world, as they should be, or obsessed with not aging. Here is a person who doesn't age for 8 decades. She remains 29 for that long. Now, if only she could let the world know exactly what she's going through, we would have found a miracle drug or a wonder machine. She would have become, of course, throughout, I mean, there is a mention somewhere that, she doesn't want to be seen as a specimen, but it might be better. The society would really take care of her if that was the case, as with the leading lady in this picture. That's one aspect of it. I think the other aspect, which I thought was fascinating, and here is a person who, of course, cannot fall in love with someone because, this would lead to complications. There's a lovely line out there that if there's love that does not lead to fruition or does not lead to old age, then it leads to heartbreak. But when she does fall in love with someone, that guy is absolutely the perfect 10 that I can ever think of. He's self-made. He is a mathematician. He is also a poet. He is also a philanthropist, and he gives a lot to the world in general, six-pack to go with it, and a lovely man. I think that perfect 10 is what made me believe that this is actually a movie made for a huge female audience.
No question. I mean, it's a soppy, fairy tale like romance which requires a certain suspension of disbelief. But given that most of our films today are fantasy films, any case, between superheroes and J.R.R. Tolkien and Harry Potter and all of that, we've had great films like Ghost, which have withstood the passage of time and have become classics in their own soppy romantic way, and these are great date films. I think this is exactly what it is. It was aspiring to be a great date film. You've got Blake Lively, who's known to the teeny boppers with Gossip Girl. She's also done pretty well in films like Savages and other stuff. So she's got acting chops. She looks amazing, and obviously this is a great way to showcase fashion through the ages, from the 30s, 40s, the 60s, 80s, and she just looks stunning in everything. And then, of course, you have Harrison Ford. And the most amazing thing about Harrison Ford is that he has aged so gracefully.
Wonderfully, yes.
And I think for somebody who's ageless, this is my definition of ageless, where much like Mr. Bachchan, he's now getting roles where he's accepting them with grace, and the dignity with which he delivers is just superb.
Well, I have a feeling that you mentioned Mr. Bachchan and Harrison Ford in the same statement because he sports the same goatee that Mr. Bachchan does.
Precisely.
Well, sadly enough, Fahad, my oh my god moment from this film is actually a spoiler. So I'm going to try and tiptoe around what I can mention, what I cannot mention, purely because I would like the audience to watch this film. And if they already know this, it might just kill some of the fun. So here I'm dealing with a situation as an audience where there is, of course, this young woman who's remained young for 8 decades, whereas people she's fallen in love with, they've aged a lot. Now, for that person who's living a life which is closer to, of course, old age and almost death, as it were, he has a certain memory of that person which would be equal to the girl's memory as well, except that this person looks absolutely young. I think that facet that this film deals with, where your body refuses to age, but your mind does, and nostalgia remains the same, I thought it was a very, very philosophical point, at least from the context of a picture like this.
Well, there is Mayank Shekhar, the eternal romantic, completely sort of getting philosophical and, carried away by what is otherwise a rather schmaltzy little film. Wonderful. But I must say, as far as my oh my god moment is concerned, is the very clever use of documentary footage intercutting with this. You see the Golden Gate bridge being built. This is the history of San Francisco. So it's nice to use those kind of timelines to also show the passage of time and how a city really is built. And there's some wonderful vignettes of things, underground sequences in San Francisco, things like that, which even for an audience, it's quite a revelation. So made by this indie filmmaker called Lee Toland Krieger, who made this film called Celeste and Jesse Forever. And it was a really fantastic film with Rashida Jones and Andy Samberg. And I thought he did such a great job of it. And this obviously is the big film now. So it's an interesting guy to watch out for.
Well, as I said right at the beginning of this discussion, Fahad, this is what they call the high concept film. Of course, we've seen, films deal with passage of time in various ways. There was The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, where you're growing older, but from the reverse order. And there was Groundhog Day, where the same person repeats their day again and again. So this is, in that sense, a part of that genre. But if you're looking for a science fiction film or an idealistic romance, or as you mentioned, Fahad, quite a few times before, I am quite a sucker. I can be quite a sucker for such romances. It's a theatre dhekho from my end.
Well, I'm not quite as sappy a sentimentalist as you are, Mayank, but I certainly enjoyed the film. I wouldn't go so far as to say theatre mein dekho. This is available possibly on DVD when it is, or on TV. Zarur dekho, because it's a fun, romantic fable. Nothing much, candy floss at one level, and that's all it is.
Well, the prime perk of our job, of course, Fahad, is that we get to watch big films on the big screen. But another thing that does happen alongside is that we also get to catch trailers on the big screen as well on 70mm. Of course, everybody has seen most of the trailers on YouTube before the release in the big theaters. But the one that I was struck by, I have to say, was this picture called Bahubali. It's looking fantastic visually, of course. I think Dharma or Karan Johar is distributing it in the northern markets. It's directed by Rajamouli, S.S. Rajamouli, if I'm not mistaken. I think one of the things that the viewers must know about this director is that they've actually seen a couple of films of his, even if they don't know it. One was Son of Sardar, which was a remake of a Rajamouli film. The other one was Rowdy Rathore, which is also a remake of Rajamouli's picture. And then more recently, we saw Makhi, which was again dubbed from Iga. So clearly, so far as again high concept films are concerned, this guy, knows his stuff. I really hope he proves it with this one.
Absolutely. I mean, for a generation that's now growing up watching Game of Thrones and is used to, and certainly The Hobbit and Tolkien and all these kind of films, I mean, to have an Indian film, arguably the most expensive film ever made in India, to be, released at that scale, the computer graphics, the action sequences, it's all looking very, very exciting. And it's no wonder that Dharma Productions would want to, be part of this and want to sort of bring it to a larger audience. It's been made in Tamil and Telugu, obviously dubbed in Hindi, but it's looking fantastic, and more power to such guys. Take a look at the trailer.
పైన దెయ్యాలు భూతాలు ఉంటాయి, చిన్నపిల్లల్ని పీకు తినేస్తాయి.
ఎప్పుడు చూడని కళ్ళు నన్ను దేవుళ్ళ చూస్తున్నాయి. నేను ఎవరిని?
మా దేవుడు అమరేంద్ర బాహుబలి, రక్తాని వినువు.
జై మహేశ్వతి!
be fair, we hope that every film is a Sholay before its release, and of course, we wish the filmmakers all the best. The other film that we saw, the other trailer that we saw on the big screen is the one that we're leaving you with. It's called Wazir.
खेल खेल में खेल खेल के खेल खेल ये आ जाएगा। हार जीत से हार जीत के जीत हारना सिखाएगा। खेल खेल में
आपकी चाल।
This has Mr. Bachchan as a double amputee and Farhan Akhtar, people we've seen very recently doing some great work. Let's see if they measure up with Wazir.